Cool. So welcome to lesson number 3 of the Launch School Prep webinar series. So in case you've missed any previous ones, don't worry. These webinars are designed so that they're mostly standalone and they don't really require you to have attended the previous one to understand what's happening in this one. However, we're assuming that you are in the process of going through the Launch School Prep course. That's where this material will be the most applicable. My name is Grace, and I'm a TA here at Launch School. But I'm actually also a student in the JavaScript track, like most other TAs. We're all students, most TAs, except for the senior ones. So, like I've also been in the prep course and I've been in the same shoes as you are now, completely new to the material and working my way through mastery. So I'm hoping this can feel like a safe space for everyone to ask questions, but especially also to make mistakes, since mistakes are where we're going to learn the most. So remember that there are no dumb questions. The only thing that I ask is if you have a specific question that you directed to Zoom's Q&A feature. That helps me keep track of the questions that need to be answered and have already been answered. The chat is more for like idle conversation and chit chat, so a question there might get lost. You're highly encouraged to code along and try out the examples that I'll be showing today, as well as if you've got the chance to kind of experiment and play with different results that might come out of the code. However, if at any time you're overwhelmed or you feel like you're falling behind, I'd say try not to stress too much about it. Just feel free to watch along then. And that's because all the material in the session is covered also in the Launch School's Introduction to JavaScript book, which is available publicly on the website. So I took all the material just from that book that's available publicly, and that's exactly what I used to make this lesson plan today. So really, this is just an opportunity to make the learning experience of that book a more interactive one than a solitary one. So if you feel like you've missed anything, feel free to reference that book at the end of this session. Coding wise, I'll be using Amazon Web Services Cloud 9. These are just some of the notes from my last session, actually. We don't need those today. Right. This is Amazon Web Service Cloud 9, and it's what we recommend for those starting out, but you can use whatever coding environment works for you. You simply need to have access to a terminal, that's that black box down here, and it should have Node installed. So if you're joining us with Cloud9 today, then don't worry about installing anything. Node already comes pre-installed, so it should look similar to something like my screen here, and you're just good to go. Okay. So in terms of today's lesson specifically, we're going to be covering flow control. And flow control comprises of conditionals, such as your if, else, and if-else statements. Pardon, if-else and else-if statements. We also have switch statements, but we might not get a look at that today. So these conditionals are, and flow control are a really powerful way to determine the flow of the data in your program. Related to that, we're going to need to take a closer look at Boolean values like true and false, and how JavaScript can actually coerce any value to a true or false value. This concept is also known as truthiness or falsiness as well. And this is really important, especially for the conditions in our flow control conditionals, right? Lastly, at the end, we're also going to take a look at loops, which are a really powerful tool in programming to automate tedious tasks, and are also they also heavily rely on conditionals and our Boolean values true and false. Okay, so it's all going to tie together at the end. Let's get started. So everyone can see my Cloud9 screen here, right? I'm aware it's a little tinier than usual today, so I apologize about that. Right, so first off, let's do an overview of comparison operators. So, oh no. Sorry, my terminal is so small today. Okay, I will, if it's challenging to see, like, let me know in the chat and I'll try and paste the results into the upper half of the screen. Okay, so comparison operators. Right, so comparison operators are operators, like their name suggests, and they perform a comparison between the two values we provided. So the values we provide an operator are called operands. So comparison operators specifically return a Boolean value. Return a Boolean value. So Boolean value means true or false, right? Boolean values are like on or off. It's like a light switch. It can only be one of two. So let's go into the node REPL. So as you can see in the terminal, I hit node and I hit enter. And this is like a really useful tool in order for us to see the immediate results of the JavaScript code that we enter into it. So think of it as like a JavaScript code playground environment. And let's do some comparison operations here. So commonly what we can do is provide the comparison operator greater than. So I'm going to start off with a greater than operator. And it's going to compare whether or not the first value is greater than the second value. So if I type 100 greater than 1 and I hit enter, we're going to see that it's true. It conducted a comparison of the two values we provided it, and the result of that is true. 100 is greater than 1. So similarly, we also have the less than operator where 100 is less than 1, and that's false because 100 is greater than 1. Right. We also have the greater than and equal to operator, which compares if the second operand is greater than or equal to the first. So 100 is equal to 100, even though it's not greater than, so we get true. Likewise, we also have the less than operator as well. So greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. And we also have the equality operator, the strict equality operator using 3 equal signs, which compares the two operands and evaluates whether or not they are the same. So we have 1 is equal to 1, and that's true. See, we have even string comparisons. So I have the string hi, and I'm going to compare it to the string hi. We get true. If I compare the string with a capital H hello and a lowercase h hello, we're going to see that they are not equal, right? It's case sensitive. The strict equality operator is checking for strict equality, so whether or not it is the same value. So we're going to see this as well with, we're going to compare a string number with a number. And we can see that despite the fact that they both have 3 in them, one is a string and one is a number, and we get the Boolean value false. They are not the same. Okay, so really basic. Again, the operator is whatever is in the middle, not always, but most of the time. Some operators only take one operand. But for the ones that we're demonstrating now, we have the operator in the middle, and whatever values we provide to an operator is called an operand. So in this example, hello and hi strings are operands, and the strict equality operator in the middle is the operator. Okay, let's click there. Okay, so then we can get into flow control. So then what is flow control? When we think of a computer program, we can think of it as a journey for our data. So our data is going to travel through various paths. So if there are these paths, how do we decide which path the data takes? And determining which path the data takes is called flow control. And how then do we control the flow of data? We use conditionals. So continuing with our journey analogy then, we can think of a conditional as a fork in the road or multiple forks in the road. The conditional is going to determine which way the data is going to go. So let's start with the simplest conditional, which is an if statement. So for if statement, I'm going to exit the REPL actually. So I'm going to do that by typing .exit and hit enter. And you won't have to bother with the terminal too much anymore. So sorry if you can't see that. Because moving forward, we're going to create a JavaScript file. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to write the command touch in the terminal, and then followed by a space and the name of our file, which today I'm going to call number.js, and I'm going to hit enter. You're going to see that there was a new file added to this list on the left here. That's the file directory, and I'm just going to double click the number.js one, the one I just created. I'm going to bring that up over here. Okay. So this is our JavaScript file, and next we're going to create our if statement. So we use the if keyword followed by the space. Actually here, first off, I'm going to start with declaring a variable to use in our conditional. So I'm going to declare a variable using the let keyword, and then I'm going to give it an initial value of the number 3. So I'm going to name it number and give it an initial value of 3. Okay, now we're going to create our if statement. So I'm going to use the if keyword followed by a space and then some parentheses. This is the parentheses where we're going to place our condition. And then after that, I'm going to put another space and then write a set of curly braces. And I'm going to open those curly braces up, hitting enter in between. So in between the curly braces, this is known as the clause or a block of code. And this block of code is going to execute if the return value of the expression in a condition is true, right? So for the condition, I'm going to write an expression using the comparison operator that we just looked through. I'm going to say if the value of number is equal to 3, right? So this is going to conduct a strict equality comparison between the value of number and the value 3, right? And see if they are indeed the same value. Then it's going to return, this comparison is going to return a Boolean value, as we know. And then within this clause that corresponds to that condition, I'm going to write console.log, right? And a set of parentheses. So console.log is a built-in JavaScript function that allows us to write output to the terminal. And what I want to output to the terminal is going to be a string. And I'm going to write the string, going to have to be in the parentheses. I'm going to write the number is 3, right? So if this clause runs, we should get an output to the terminal down here that says this number is 3. So let's save the changes first, actually. I'm going to hit Command S, and then we're going to go down into our terminal to run this program and see what happens. So we're going to run our file by typing out node and then the name of the file, and I'm going to hit enter. And as we can see in very tiny, okay, there we go. At the bottom, we can see that we got the result, the number is 3. And that's because this condition evaluated to true, and that means this clause is going to run, right? So let's keep adding to our file then. So we can expand our current if statement by adding an else if option, right? That means that the condition next to the if statement evaluates as false, then this next condition, again, we're going to write the keywords else if, set of parentheses, and a set of curly braces, which is our clause. So same thing here. We have a condition that runs in the parentheses, and if this condition evaluates as true, then these curly braces are going to execute. So for this condition, this branch or this fork in the road, I'm going to write the expression if the number equal to 4. And then similarly, if it is, then we're going to output to the terminal, the number is 4, right? So let's change the value of this number to be 4 then, so that our else if statement runs. And then let's run the code again. Same as before, I save the changes to the file. That's Command S on my MacBook. And again, I'm going to run the file. If you're in the terminal and you hit up on your arrow key, you can actually bring up the last command that you entered. So that's what I'm going to do. So I need to retype it. And we can see this time we get the output, the number is 4, right? And that's because the first expression evaluated as false in the if condition. So that means this clause is not going to run. And that means this clause is evaluated, which is true. and we get the results. The number is 4, right? Okay, one more branch to add to this file. So far, we've added 2 specific branches of where our data will flow within our program. If the value that number has stored is the number 3, then the first clause will run. If number has the number 4 stored into it, then the second clause will run. But we can also define a branch that simply encompasses every other direction that doesn't fit in these 2 conditions. And we do that using the else keyword, right? So simply we're going to type the keyword else and then a set of curly braces. So no parentheses for the else keyword, only the curly braces. And that's because the way that the clause for the else condition runs is simply if these first 2 don't run, essentially they're false, that means the else condition will run. So for every other condition that's not these 2 conditions, that's when the else statement will run. So so for this clause, I'm going to put console.log if the number is not 3 or 4. Right, and then let's change the number to 5. So I save the changes again, and then I'm going to run the file again, and we're going to see that because these first 2 conditions did not run, we can see that the else clause was the one that ran because we get the results. The number is not 3 or 4. Okay, so notice how I can put any number that's not fitting into these clauses or these conditions, and we're still going to get the same result in which the else clause runs. I put 100, I can put literally anything that's not 3 or 4, and that means the else condition will run. So this is really useful because I don't want to have to make a branch for every single condition in which I want this to be output, right? I just want one branch that's going to encompass everything that's not these first 2. Okay, cool. So again, here's our if statement, condition number 1, condition number 2, and then we have their respective clauses. This is the first condition, this is the second condition. And then we have the else clause, which is the clause that executes if both condition number 1 and 2 evaluate as false. Okay. So if statements, including the else if and the else statements, can actually also be nested within each other. Let's actually rewrite this code. So another way we could have rewritten that statement is starting again with the same first condition. If number is equal to 3, then log the number is 3, right? And then we can say, but if anything else in which the number is not equal to 3, we'll execute this clause. But within the clauses, as I just mentioned, we can nest in another if statement. So I have an if number is equal to 4. Again, I could do console.log, the number is 4. And then again, if or else, if the number is 4, we'll log this output. Else, if the number is anything that's not 4, again, we're going to log the number is not 3 or 4. So essentially the result of this is the same as the last code that we just ran. However, just the structure of it is a little different. So again, I'm going to save the changes to the program, run the file again, and we're going to see we have the same result at the moment. The number is not 3 or 4. And the way that happened was that, so we first evaluated whether or not the number is 3, and that's false because the number is currently equal to 100. So then that means this else clause ran. The second else clause might be a little difficult to see because it's nested, but this whole block is the else clause. And then within the else clause, we have another setup of an if conditional. This time we are checking if the number is 3. If the number is 4. We've already checked that the number is 3. So the number we know is not 4. So then that means the second else, this nested else clause is going to run. So that means the number is not 3 or 4. Okay. Different structure, but same thing is happening here. Oops. Again, that's our code. First evaluated whether or not the number is 3, and it's not in this case. In this example, it's actually 5. So else clause runs, and then we have our nested else condition, nested if else condition. If number is 4, the number is not 4, so that means lastly, our nested else is the one that's going to run today. Okay. Okay. So back to our code. So now that we have a foundation of that, I actually have a little spin I'd like to add to what we've currently been talking about. So the information in this past section wasn't entirely accurate. I originally stated that in order for the block of code corresponding to a condition to run, so in order for a clause to run, I stated that the condition in the conditional, the expression in the conditional has to evaluate to the Boolean true, right? So we know that this operation returns the Boolean value true, and that's why this clause executes. However, in reality, the expression doesn't actually have to evaluate to the Boolean true. And this is because really JavaScript can actually coerce or change any value to a Boolean value. JavaScript can treat any value as a true or false value, okay? Let's see some code that demonstrates this. So I'm going to create a new file for this example. It's going to be, I'm going to run the command touch, and I'm going to name this one truthy.js. Gonna hit enter and open that up. Right. So here I'm going to declare a variable with the let keyword. I'm going to have the variable name be a. I'm going to initialize it to the number 5. I'm going to write another if conditional. So again, we have the parentheses for the condition. We have our curly braces for the clause that runs if the condition is true, or as I'm going to demonstrate, not necessarily. So I'm going to open that up. And then I'm also going to have an else statement that encompasses everything else. So within the condition of the if statement, I'm going to write the expression a. Right? That's it. Within that clause, I'm going to write a is true. Right? And then in the else block, I'm going to write it's not true. Right? So we can see that a is currently assigned to 5, and it's not a Boolean value, but it's not true or false, but we're going to see what this output is. So I'm going to say the changes to the file, and let's run it. Node truthy.js and hit enter. And surprisingly, we get a is true, which means that the first condition, this first clause is the one that executed, which means that this evaluated to true. Interesting. So the takeaway from this is that JavaScript seems to treat the value number 5 as true. Okay. Let's try another example, and I'm just going to edit the code we already have here. So instead, I'm going to do the variable b, and I'm going to assign it to 0. In the condition, I'm going to put b, and I'm going to write b is true, and else it's not true. So I'm going to see if it changes. Oops. And again, I'm going to run the file, hit enter, and we're going to see that what was output to the console was it's not true, which means the first condition did not run. The second clause ran, which means, which is our else clause, which means that if this is not a true value, then the else clause is the one that's going to run. So again, the takeaway here is that b is currently initialized to the number 0. And that means for some reason, JavaScript treated 0 as a false value. Okay, so then how do we know which values JavaScript is going to change to true or to false? Well, the easier way is to actually remember which values JavaScript treats as false. Okay, right? And that's because JavaScript only treats these 6 values as false. And we call these falsy values. So that's the Boolean false, the number 0, an empty string, which can be in single quotes, double quotes, or backticks, right? These are all empty strings. The primitive value undefined, the primitive value null, and nan, not a number. So these are the 6 values that JavaScript treats as false. And the values that JavaScript treats as true is everything else that's not those 6 values. Okay. Right. So again, these are the 6 values that JavaScript treats as false, and everything else is true. Well, JavaScript treats as true. And there's an important distinction here between the language. So we can say that this first expression, we can say that evaluates to true because it actually returns a Boolean value. When we do the strict equality operation, it actually returns the Boolean operator, the Boolean value true or false, right? So we can say that this evaluates to true. However, as we just mentioned, these 6 values evaluate not as false, except for false, but JavaScript treats as false. So if we have the expression 0, it would be incorrect to say that JavaScript evaluates this as false because it's not the actual false value. It's just JavaScript will treat it as false. So vice versa, if we have a value that JavaScript treats as true, for example, we have the string hello, right? And as mentioned in the falsy list, we only have the empty string that will count as a false value. So that means a string with characters in it is going to be a value that JavaScript treats as true. However, it would be incorrect to say that hello evaluates to true because it's not true. A simpler way to say it to avoid confusion is to say that the expression evaluates to a truthy value. The string hello is a truthy value, okay? So we can describe these values as falsy, and we can describe everything else as truthy, okay? So that's an important note on precision of language because you don't want to say something like undefined is false because undefined is not false. Okay, cool. So let's take a look at our first quiz. There we go. So what is the output when this code runs? What is the output when this code runs? I'll give it a couple more seconds. So we have very similar to the first example. We have let number is equal to 8. We create an if condition. The first condition is if the number is greater than 5, then that means this clause will run. Then we have another branch in which the number is 5. Then we output to the console number is 5. If none of those conditions are met, we have the else clause, and it says the number is less than 5. And because we know number is assigned to 8, that means the first condition will run, and we get the number is greater than 5. Okay, so the answer is the number is greater than 5. Cool. Next quiz. What is the output when this code runs? Some of these are tricky. They're The quizzes today are definitely designed to trip people up, so. I'll give it a couple seconds. Okay, so let's see what we've got here. I'm going to actually paste this example and do another quiz. Okay, so paste this in. Save that file. Okay, so what's going on in this code? We have we've declared a variable using the let keyword. The variable's name is r, and we're going to assign it to an empty array, right? So we have a condition if, and the expression is simply r. And if this evaluates as true, then, or is a truthy value, then this first clause will run. Otherwise, the second clause will run. So let's see what happens when we run this code. And we're going to see that for some reason, we actually got this is true. Okay, so that means the first condition ran, which means an empty array is a truthy value, which makes sense because remember, the only values that JavaScript treats as false and therefore are falsy are the Boolean false, the number 0, an empty string, but not an empty array, undefined, null, and nan. So if this isn't what the expression evaluates to, it will always be a truthy value. So in this case, it's an empty array, and even though it is an empty array, we're going to, it's a truthy value. So the first condition is the one that's going to run. Okay, so memorize your 6 falsy values. Okay, so next quiz. What is the output when this code runs? Okay, I think most people got this, or everyone seems to have gotten it. I was thinking it might have been tricky, so let's paste this in. And I always change these quotes because Google Slides uses the illegal quotes. That doesn't work in code. Okay, I'm gonna save that file and then let's see what this outputs. And we get the number as 100. So some of you may have been wondering, okay, so the first expression evaluates as truthy, so this condition should run, but so does the second one. Both conditions are met. Number is equal to 100, but number is also greater than 1. So then the question would be, okay, so like, are both clauses going to run, or is the second one going to run, or is the first one going to run? And the answer is that even though this value means that multiple expressions in a conditional evaluate as truthy or true, it's actually the first one that's going to run. So think about it as a 3-way path. We have a path, and if you're looking for the path that meets your requirements, you're going to take the first one. What you aren't going to do is you're not going to go down that path and then be like, oh, the second one is true too, and then you're going to come back and go to the second one. You're simply going to go down the first path, and that's the path you're committing to. So you can think of it as that analogy if that helps you. So the correct answer is the number is 100. Even if multiple branches evaluate as true or truthy, the first one is the one that's going to execute. Okay. Cool. Last quiz. Let me bring it up here. What is the output when this code runs? Okay, awesome. This one's a tricky one, so let me paste it in and we're gonna go through it. Okay. Oh shoot. There we go. Okay. So what's happening here? So we declare a variable number and we initialize it to the number 0. We have another if statement, and we have two branches. So we have the if and the else. So really the important thing to determine here is which condition or which clause is going to run. And we can just simply find that out by looking at the expression here. But there's a gotcha to this expression. So we have number is not, we're not using the strict equality operator, but we're actually using the reassignment operator. So this is not evaluating whether or not number is 5, it's actually reassigning the number variable to the number 5. So then we get, we simply get, we're reassigning number to 5 in this condition. And then we have the two clauses. So let's see which one's going to run. Quiz.js. And we get the number is 5. Okay, so that means the first condition ran. This condition ran, right? And why is that, right? So the way I'm going to illustrate why that happened is I'm actually going to go into the node REPL in the terminal. So node, hit enter. And I'm going to write, first I'm going to make a statement. So let number is equal to 0. I'm declaring the variable number and I'm assigning it to, I'm initializing it to the number 0. So the reason why we get undefined is that whenever you're declaring a variable using the let const keywords, that's considered a statement. Anything with a let const keyword in it is considered a statement, which means that you can't capture the return value of this line into a variable or anything. You can't, there is no return value essentially in order to capture. However, if I reassign the number variable to the number 5, the reassignment operator actually returns the value that we assigned it to. So when we reassign the number to 5, the return value of this line is 5. So that means not only are we reassigning the number variable to the number 5, but also the expression itself returns the number 5. So that means this expression in between the parentheses essentially evaluates to 5, right? And as we learned before, JavaScript treats any number that's not 0 as a truthy value, right? So that means this is a truthy value. That means this first expression is going to run, and we get the number is 5, even though it's not. Okay. But many of you answered none of the above, and that's because this clause is not going to run. Or yeah, this clause is not going to run, but I anticipate most people thought this clause is going to run, and it actually says the number is not 5, which is not the second option, the number is 0. It's none of the above. So I believe most people are going for this answer, but the first one is the correct answer. So this is the reason why I made this quiz question, is because this is a very common mistake that a lot of beginners make. They forget to use the strict equality operator when they're conducting their comparisons, and they use the assignment operator instead, which leads to very different results. And also it manipulates your variables. So this is a very tricky bug, and it leads to some results that you really wouldn't expect. So keep an eye out for it. But you'll often have hints towards these things, especially if you're using Cloud9. Like as you can see here, there was a bit of a warning flag already that Cloud9 tipped off that it expected a conditional expression, but we saw an assignment instead. So we, instead of putting a conditional expression, we reassign the number variable, which I want to say, I never want to say never, but like I want to say that you never, like I can't really foresee a circumstance in which you would want to do this. So really it's just, even if you can think of a way to do this or a reason why you should do this, I would say it's just bad practice in general, because most people are going to think that you've made a mistake. So try and avoid it, I suppose. Okay. Cool. Let's see. So let's take a look at some more operators that can help us control our conditionals even further. So for this, I'm going to go to our node REPL. So let's clear this up a little bit. Oops, I'm going to type .exit first, and I'm going to write clear, and that's just going to clear my console. Okay, so right, I'm going to go into our node REPL again. I'm going to hit node, type node, hit enter. So the first operator that I'd like to look at is called the not operator, and it's signified by a single exclamation point, right? So this is an example of an operator that takes only one operand, and it's going to take the operand to the right of it without a space. So if the operand that we provide to the not operator is true, then it'll return false. If we provide the false value to the not operator, then it returns true. It's simply returning the opposite, right? However, as this gets complicated, as it usually does, it's also going to work for truthy and falsy values as well. So if we provided a truthy operand, oops, I forgot to close the string. So if we provided a truthy operand, because JavaScript treats the string hello as a truthy value as true, that means the opposite of a truthy value is going to be false, right? Notice that we don't get the falsy value of an empty string. We always get a Boolean value with a not operator. So it's going to first evaluate whether or not the operand that we provided is a truthy or falsy value, and then provide the opposite Boolean value. Okay, so not undefined is going to run true, right? I'm going to do not, and I'm going to put some comparisons in in parentheses. So I'm going to evaluate whether or not 4 is equal to 4, and we know that 4 is equal to 4, so this should return true. But because we reverse it, I guess that's a way of saying it, we use the not operator on it, we're going to get false. Okay. So the not operator takes one operand to the right of the operator, and it returns a Boolean value. False if operand is truthy, and true if operand is falsy. Okay. So the next one is the and operator. Let me go back here. Right. Let me clear again. The next one is the and operator, and is noted by 2 ampersand symbols. So this is Shift 7 for me on my MacBook. So this is an operator that takes 2 operands, one on each side, and it returns true when both operands are truthy values. If either one or both operands are falsy, then it returns false. So for example, true and, so we have to do 2 ampersand symbols. So true and true are both true, so we're going to get true. When we do true and false, so both of them are not true, so that's why we get false. In order for the and operator to return true, both operands have to evaluate to true. So if we get even one value in which it's not true, then immediately we'll get false. So we can see that the second operand was true, but the first was false. So that means no matter what order it's in, as long as one of them is false, we're still going to get false. Both of them must be true in order for it to return true. So same case, we're going to do both of them are false, and since neither of them are true, both of them are not true, we're going to get false. Okay. We have 4 is equal to 4. Again, you know, I can mix it up a little bit. 5, we know that these both of these operations return a Boolean value as well. And both of them are going to return true because 4 is equal to 4, 5 is equal to 5. So we're going to get true. We have some interesting behavior here. So Something about the AND operator is that it does something called short circuiting, which is when, since both have to evaluate as true, we can think of the JavaScript as being lazy. So if both operands must evaluate as true, then if the first one is false, then already we know that this entire expression is going to be false because we already encountered one false value, right? So what JavaScript actually does, and this is what short circuiting is that once it encounters this false value, it says, okay, I don't even have to look at the second one. Like I already know from just the first word, I already know what this expression is going to say, and that is, it's going to be false. So what's actually happening underneath the hood is that JavaScript evaluates this first value for the AND operator, and then it won't even take a look at the second one. So immediately it will know it's false just from the very first operand, because remember, both have to be true in order for it to return true. So since it's already going to know the answer from just the first value, since one of it is already false, it's going to return false immediately and not look at the second expression, not look at the second operand. Same thing happens here. So then what's actually happening is that JavaScript is returning, and for the AND operator, it's going to return the last evaluated expression. So let me demonstrate here. I'm going to write the expression undefined and 100. So although we've been currently working with Boolean values, the AND operator works also with truthy and falsy values. So if I hit enter here, we're going to get undefined. So I did a comparison operation, or sorry, I did a logical operation. I did undefined and 100, right? If we remember, undefined is a falsy value. 100 is going to be a truthy value. So why did this expression return undefined? And the reason why it returned undefined is because, again, for this operation, remember that both values must be a truthy value, must be true in order for it to return a truthy value. However, undefined is a falsy value, and again, JavaScript got lazy. It did the short circuiting thing where it looked at the first operand that we provided and it said, okay, undefined, oh, that's a falsy value. That means this entire expression is going to result in a falsy value. And that means it doesn't have to even look at the second one. So then it evaluated undefined and it said, okay, like I already know that this expression is undefined. So it's going to return that value, right? If I do two truthy values, hello and world, I'm going to hit enter. It's going to return world. Why is that? So again, let's break this down. First, JavaScript looked at the first value, which is hello, the string hello, and we know that that's a truthy value. So JavaScript was like, okay, this first one is truthy, so the next one might be truthy too. So I'm going to have to take a look at the second one as well. So the second one is world, and that is also a truthy value. So this is the last expression that JavaScript evaluated, and that's going to be world. Okay, so this is going to return the last evaluated expression. So in the first example, it was undefined, and the second example, it was world. Okay. Tricky. The short circuiting is where it gets a little difficult for sure. So one more time. We have the logical AND operator, which takes two operands on either side of the operator. It returns Boolean values, usually. If both of the expressions that we provide the AND operator are Boolean values, then it's going to return a Boolean value. True if both operands are truthy, so this should be true. False if one or both operands are false. However, for the short circuiting behavior, this applies to the truthiness and the falsiness as well. So it's going to return the last evaluated value. Okay. All right. One more operator to cover, and then we're going to go for another quiz. So just now we covered the AND operator, and this is an equally tricky but very similar concept. This is the OR operator. So the OR operator is represented by two vertical bar symbols. So that's shift and backslash for me, not forward slash. So the backslash button for me is right above the return key on my MacBook. And so it's going to result in two vertical bars. Okay. So again, let's start with Boolean values first, since that's a little simpler. So I'm going to do true or true, right? I'm going to hit enter, and we got the Boolean value true. So what the OR operator is evaluating is whether or not at least one operand is true. So if we get true or false, we're going to get true because at least one operand was true, right? But if we get false and false, then we're going to get false. So for this operator, at least one operand must evaluate as true, okay? So 4 is equal to 4. We know that this is going to be true. Or 3 is equal to 5. We know that this is going to be false, but this is still going to evaluate as true because at least one of them are true, right? So for the AND operator, we saw that both must evaluate to true. But for the OR operator, only one or both have to evaluate as true, okay? And of course, we're going to complicate things with the truthiness and the falsiness. So I'm going to do hello or empty string, right? I'm going to hit enter. Okay, so what's happening here? Again, we're seeing this behavior called short circuiting. So we have first a truthy value and a falsy value, right? We have hello, or we have an empty string. As I mentioned, for the OR operator, only one or both of the operands must evaluate to true in order for it to return a true, return true, or the truthy value. So what's happening here? We see the first value, which is a truthy value, and the OR operator is again lazy. It's going to be like, oh, okay, so like I already know the first one is true. That means I don't even have to look at the second one because only one or both have to be true in order for it to return true. So just by looking at the first truthy value, this operator already knows the result. It's going to know, okay, like I don't even have to look at the second one because no matter what that is, whether it's false or true or falsy or truthy, this expression is already going to be a truthy return. So it's going to be string hello. If I do undefined or 100, I'm going to hit enter. We're going to get 100. So what happened was here we got undefined, and the JavaScript looked at it and was like, okay, that's a falsy value. So there's a chance that the second value is going to be truthy. So I'm going to have to take a look at it. So it doesn't short circuit. Instead, JavaScript takes a look at the second value and it's 100, and it's like, oh, okay, so 100 is the truthy value. So that's the expression that it's going to return. Okay. The key to this is figuring out what values are truthy and falsy, and figuring out when JavaScript, if JavaScript is going to take a look at the second value or not. If it doesn't, then it will just return the first value. If it does, then it's going to return the second value. Okay, so 0 and null. Again, this is a falsy value, so JavaScript was like, okay, I'm going to have to take a look at the second value in order to determine if this is a truthy or falsy return. Second value happens to also be falsy, but that was the last evaluated expression, so that means we get null. Okay. So we have the OR operator. Takes two operands on either side of the operator, again, similar to the AND operator, and it returns the, sorry, this is incorrect. Returns the last evaluated expression. Similar to the AND operator, right? And again, it also sees that this is really the definition of short circuiting, that it will return the last evaluated expression. In this example, we saw that it looked at hello, and then therefore this was a truthy value. It doesn't even have to look at the second value, therefore it returned hello. That's the last evaluated expression because it's not even going to evaluate the second expression. For these two, it had to look at both. So this is the first evaluated expression, and then this was the second evaluated, therefore it returns the second evaluated expression, and this is similar for this example as well. Okay. This short-circuiting behavior and the return values of the and the or logical operator is probably the hardest part of conditionals, I would say. So if it's not quite sinking in yet, definitely review the material, and you're going to, yeah, I would say definitely it's just about review and exposure. I have a question here. So why doesn't the expression hello or bye return bye? Isn't bye truthy also? Great question. So bye is correct. Bye is also a truthy value. However, remember for the or operator, only one of them has to evaluate as truthy, right? So when we saw this example, true and true, true or true returns true, but true or false returns true. So only one of them have to be a truthy value in order for it to return true. But when we're working with truthy values and falsy values, remember that this operator is lazy, so that we saw the first operation. So we look at the first value and it's hello, which is a truthy value, and that means JavaScript doesn't even have to look at bye. It already knows, just by the fact that one operand is a truthy value, that this entire expression is going to be a truthy expression. So because it doesn't even look at this, hello is considered to be the last evaluated expression, and therefore it's going to return hello. Okay. Tricky. Good question. Okay. I'm going to just show a quick example. I know we're running out of time here. I'm just going to show a really quick example, kind of how these operators work in action, just because we've only seen it in like this very abstract perspective. I'm going to go to this number file, let number equal to 3. If this is where our conditionals come in, number is equal to 3, or the or operator, number is equal to 4. Console.log, the number is 3 or 4, right? Oops. Else, console.log, the number is not 3 or 4. Right, so we can see this is kind of where the conditional, the or operator, the logical or operator comes into place. So we have the number is equal to 3 or the number is equal to 4. So if either of these evaluate as true, then this entire expression will return true, right? And that means this condition will run. So if we run that file, node number.js, we can see that the number is currently assigned to the number 3. So that means this first expression is going to evaluate as true. And therefore, remember with the logical or operator, it doesn't even have to evaluate this expression then. So we're simply just going to get true. And that's why we get the number is 3 or 4, because this condition ran. Right? Okay, and then lastly with the AND operator, let number is equal to 4. If number is greater or equal to 3 and number is less than or equal to 6, this is a really good way to define a range that you're looking for. And the number is between 3 and 6 inclusive, because I'm also including, since it's less than or equal to or greater than equal to, I'm including the number 3 and 6. So I'm going to write inclusive, else, console.log, the number is less than 3 or greater than 6, right? So I'm going to save that and I'm going to run the file again, and we're going to see that we get the number is equal to 4. Number is currently assigned to 4, which is in between, is number 4 is greater than or equal to 3 and less than or equal to 6, right? It's in between these values. So that's why we get the number is between 3 and 6 inclusive. But if I were to, let's say, make it a number outside of that range, then the number is indeed greater than or equal to 3, but it's not less than 6. So remember, for this AND operator, both must be true. In order for it to evaluate as true, only one of them evaluated as true. So that means this entire expression evaluates as false. That means this first clause will not run, and that means we have our else statement that's going to run. And so when we run that file, we get the number is less than 3 or greater than 6, because it is indeed greater than 6. Okay. Something that you're going to see here that's really interesting is that we have a bunch of operators here, right? We have the greater than or equal to, we have the less than or equal to operator, and we have the and operator. But for some reason, JavaScript knew to evaluate this expression first, right? Like conduct this operation first, and then this operation, right? Like for example, why didn't it conduct this operation first? Why didn't it compare 3 and number, right? That would have really thrown like a wrench into this whole thing, and that would mean like a completely different expression that's being evaluated. And the reason why is because JavaScript actually has a set of precedence rules with multiple operators. So this means that it evaluates certain operations before others, regardless of the order. So this is called operator precedence. And as you can see, comparison operators are evaluated first. That's the greater equal to, greater, less than. We have the equality operators. And then lastly, after that, we'll have the logical and the logical or operators, right? However, a way to override this preset operator precedence is with the use of parentheses. So you might have seen me doing it with the node examples here. I put the parentheses here. So even though these equality operations are going to be evaluated before the or operations, it's useful to show your intent with the parentheses, because I can sit here and relist, like, really the best thing for me would be to say that you should memorize this chart and think about which operator precedence comes before the others. But in reality, like a lot of other programmers also won't have this memorized. So the best thing for your code is to show your intent by using brackets to show which expressions that you want to evaluate first. And this way, even if you're not aware of this precedence, you're always in control of which operation is being evaluated first. So let's say you weren't entirely sure about which was going to be evaluated first in this expression. I would say just like go ahead and put the parentheses there, right? And that this way you control for certain, and others also know for certain that this expression is first going to be evaluated, then this expression, and then the results of those expressions are then going to be evaluated with the AND operator. Okay. So I'm going to show an example where we get really differing results depending on whether or not there's parentheses. So again, I'm going to go into our node REPL. I'm going to do 100 or empty string and false and true, right? We're going to see we get true. But if I were to do that without the parentheses, we're going to get, right? We're going to get a very different result, right? So show your intent. The most important thing here is when you have an expression with multiple operators, just be clear with your intent. Use the parentheses. It not only helps you, but also helps others understand what you're trying to intend with your code. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to say, thanks so much for attending. I know we went a little over, and I do have more material, but I respect everyone's time. So if you do have to leave, I'm just going to leave you with this feedback form. If you're intending to leave now, please fill it out. It really helps us keep track of what's working with these workshops, where we can improve, and what you guys like about these workshops. We're constantly iterating on them and trying to make them better and more useful for everyone. So contributing to that feedback form would be a huge help for us. If you're heading out right now, then thank you so much for attending. If you're attending next week as well, same time, I'll be going over arrays and objects. And next week's lesson is actually one of my favorite ones. I'm going to be looking at collections. So working with collections. So we're going to be using the map method, filter method, for each method, iteration methods, basically. So if callback functions and array iteration is something that you really struggle with, like I really break that down I think callback functions were especially really tricky for me to understand when I was initially going through the prep material. So if that's something you struggle with, definitely tune in next week as well, and we'll be going over arrays. Okay. If you're sticking around, I can just do this one last quiz and then just to test your knowledge of what you've gotten so far. But if you do have to head out, then thanks so much for attending again, and I hope to see you again. So let's go here and move on with the quiz. So same as before, starting off a little easier. What is the output when this code runs? Okay, let's break it down. So we have, let's go to the quiz one. Okay, so okay, so let's run this file and see what happens. Quiz.js, and we're going to see we got the string goodbye, right? So that means neither of these if and else if statements evaluated as truthy. That means the else condition ran. So what happened here? This is an example of just, really breaking down the operations that are happening. So we have is number greater than 0 and number less than 5. So remember with the less than operator, it's not evaluating whether or not they're equal. So 5 is not less than 5 because 5 is equal to 5. So that means this actually evaluates as false. So even though this evaluates as true, remember with the AND operator, we need both of them to be true. So that means this entire expression evaluated as false. This clause is not going to run. Else if number is greater than 5 and number is less than 10. So we know that 5 is less than 10, but again, 5 is not greater than 5 because 5 is equal to 5. So in order for this to run true, we would need to use the greater than and equal to, right? Same thing as the above expression, we would have to do less than or equal to for these to run true. But again, neither of these are true. So both branches are evaluate as false or falsy, and that means the else statement is going to run, and that's why we get goodbye. Okay. Next quiz. Oh, the tricky ones. What is going to be the value assigned to the variable name? Remember, think about for the or operator, one or both have to be true / truthy, right? So that means, what does that mean here? If we extend the logic of one or both have to be true, and remembering that the or operator returns, it short circuits, but it also returns the last evaluated expression. Okay, let's break this down. So let name is equal to an empty string or Grace, right? So what happened here? So the or operator, again, means that one or both have to be true in order for it to return true. So then if we're working with truthy values, the first one is a falsy value because an empty string is a falsy value, right? So JavaScript looks at this one and goes, okay, that's false. So that means, remember for the or, at least one of them has to be true. So that means because the first one is false, JavaScript has to look at the second one because, oh, like there's a chance that it might be true. So first looks at the falsy value and goes like, okay, that's not it. Then we're going to look at the next value, and this is indeed a truthy value. And this is also because this is the last expression that JavaScript looked at. That means this is going to be the last one that's going to be returned, right? So actually, I can just do this in the node REPL. We do empty string or grace, and that means the return value is grace, and that means the value that is assigned to the variable name is the string grace. Okay, so whichever is the last one that JavaScript looks at is the one that's going to be returned. And because the first one is a falsy value, that means JavaScript has to look at the last one because there's a chance that it might be truthy. Interestingly, if we did it the other way around, we still get the same result, but the way that we get it is a little interesting, is a little different because first we evaluated the first string, which is a truthy value. And so JavaScript was like, okay, like that's a truthy value. That means I don't even have to look at the second one because in order for this to evaluate as true, one or both have to be true, right? So JavaScript was like, okay, so like I already know that one is true, and that means my conditions for this logical operator to be true are already met, right? Because whether or not this is going to be a truthy value, the second one is going to be a truthy value or not, whether it's another truthy string or whether it's a falsy value, it doesn't change the fact that we only need to look at the first one in order to know that it's a truthy value, right? So the correct answer is the string grace. The logical operators are definitely the hardest for sure. Okay, similar approach here. What is the value that will be assigned to the variable r? What is going to be the last evaluated expression? Ask yourself, does JavaScript have to look at the second one? Okay, let's take up this answer. So let's do this in the node REPL. I think it's a little easier. So I declare the variable and initialize it to whatever this expression evaluates to. And so if we access the variable r, we should see the value is an empty array, right? So that means it was the empty array that became assigned to r. So what happened here again? So remember from our last quiz that an empty array is a truthy value. It's not a falsy value. The only 6 values, again, that JavaScript treats as false are the Boolean false, the number 0, an empty string, undefined, null, and nan, right? So that means in this expression, both operands are truthy operands, right? And again, for the or operator, we only need one or both, but we just need one to be truthy in order for it to evaluate as truthy, right? So that means, again, JavaScript looked at the first empty array and was like, okay, that's already truthy. That means I don't even have to look at the second value because I already met the condition, at least one or more of the operands provided to the or operator have to be truthy. So JavaScript was like, okay, there's my truthy value. I don't even need to look at the second one. And that's why it returned the empty array and assigned the empty array to R. Okay, so the correct answer there is the empty array. Last quiz question, and I'll spare you a break. Truthiness, since go. What does this expression evaluate to? take the time to break it down bit by bit. Okay, let's go through it real quickly. So I'll break it down line by line. Okay, so for this first half, let's just break down the parentheses really. So we have 0 and not false. So that's confusing. Let's do 0 and not false. So that's true, right? The bang operator, the not operator will return the opposite. And we have not hello. So remember that hello is a truthy value. So that means not hello is going to be false and then true. So essentially we're down to here. So 0 is a truthy value. Pardon me, it's a falsy value. And we have the true Boolean value as well. So remember, again, this is going to return the last evaluated expression. This is a falsy value, so that means JavaScript is going to have to take a look at the second value in order to determine what it is. So that means true is going to be the last evaluated expression here. Really, you can just look at it like this. If this is a false value and this is a true value, and we only need one to be true, that means this is true, right? Because one of them is true. Then we lastly get true, and here as well we have false or true. And again, one of them meets the criteria of being true, so we get true. And then lastly, we have true and true. And remember, for the AND operator, both are going to be true in order for it to return true, and therefore we get true. So let's put this into the node REPL and see our results, and we get true. Okay, sometimes it's tedious to break these down like this, but sometimes you just need to take the time to break it down, right? It's not something you should just like glance at and be like, okay, like I know this instantly. Like this kind of stuff takes time. Okay, wonderful. So we didn't make it to loops, but I think we got a really thorough deep dive into our conditionals and especially our logical operators. So once again, thank you so much for attending. Again, please fill out the feedback form. It really helps us know what's working and what's not working with these workshops. And yeah, thanks for attending. If you're going to be there for my next week's webinar on arrays and array iteration methods and iterating over collections, then I'll see you then. Otherwise, have a great rest of your evening or day wherever you are. And yeah. If you have any questions related to any of the content that I discussed today, or even anything really related to the prep course or launch school, like I'm happy to stick around and answer. But otherwise, I'll see you all next time. If you think of a question that if you have to rush and you end up thinking of a question later on, like feel free to message me on the Launch School Slack. Again, my name is Grace Lim, and I have a TA designation, so it's going to look something like this. You can DM me there on Slack, and I'm happy to answer any other questions you've got today. I think it looks like everyone's pretty wiped from today, so yeah. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care.